Thank you all for joining us this evening. We are now going to get started. Welcome to the webinar of Foundation for Philippine Progress. You are tuning in to the 6th installment of our signature event series called Philippines is in the Heart. Today's event is Kumain Ka Na, a celebration of Filipino food, flavors, and family. And today we have joining us are our own project coordinators, Kalalo and Jeline Abenoha. So good evening from Portland. We also have people joining from all over the country. Magandang gabi po sa inyong lahat. Thank you for joining us. Maraming salamat sa inyong pagdalo. The Rondalia music you heard playing in the background was generously donated to us by Erna Cruz Louie of the American Center of Philippine Arts based in Oakland. Thank you, Erna. And my name is Rosella De Leon. I'm the Executive Director for Foundation for Philippine Progress. And now to discuss the virtual code of conduct, because we know that this online platform might be new to some of you, we want to go over some of the virtual code of conduct during our time together tonight. First, please rename yourself with your name, the city and organization from which you are joining us today, if that applies. For example, my name is Rosella, so I have my name in the first part of the name that you see in the participants list. And then following my name is the city where I'm from, so Portland, and then followed by my organization, which is Foundation for Philippine Progress, or FPP. So if you click the participants list, you'll see that there are 3 dots above your name. So you may click that, click rename, and that should allow you to rename yourself. Second, please mute your phone or computer microphone throughout the webinar. Third, please be respectful with your comments and questions. You are more than welcome to type your comments or questions in the chat box throughout the presentation. If you have any questions, please utilize the chat box by clicking the chat button found in the controls in the bottom of your screen. Our staff team will be looking at the chats throughout the presentation. And today's presentation will be recorded and then uploaded to our YouTube page afterwards. So you'll get a chance to watch the video again and share it with your networks. Joining me in different parts of the program tonight will be our volunteer staff team. They are responsible for putting together this webinar series. So you'll see on the screen there. Thank you so much for working tirelessly to our staff team for making these events happen. We have Roger Rigor, our PR coordinator, and also our board vice chair. We have Ronald Antonio, our marketing director. And of course, our project coordinators, Jeline Abenoha and Kalalo. And now I give the floor to Roger Rigor to talk a little bit about our work.
Magandang gabi sa lahat. Before we begin the presentation today, we would like to acknowledge and thank the Coast Salish nations, Squamish, Muckleshoot, Tulalip, and Suquamish, on whose traditional territory we teach, learn, and live. Thank you. This webinar series is brought to you by the Foundation for Philippine Progress. We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization that is dedicated to empower and engage communities in programs and projects for the Philippines to secure quality health, education, and basic human rights for every Filipino. We are based in Portland, Oregon, but we work with communities across the United States while conducting our projects for vulnerable communities in the Philippines. I'd like to show you now our promo video.
The Philippines, Luzon, Visayas, Mindanao, Lumad, Aita, workers, students, farmers, mothers, fathers, grandchildren, nurses, teachers, doctors, 7,000 islands without enough water, typhoon prone, vast and rich lands, but the people are hungry. So we've partnered with organizations in the Philippines, nonprofits, hospitals, relief organizations, to launch the Foundation for Philippine Progress, to partner with you for a united, whole, rich Philippines, for a full life for every Filipino.
As an educator, the words of Brazilian educator Paulo Freire quotes, "Education is an act of love and thus an act of courage," which is a quotation that is very timely today. Having been an educator, the spirit of education in pursuit of truth continues. One cannot simply say, "I am done," especially in the midst of today's global crisis. It will never be done, more so with the Philippines in our hearts. It is a privilege and an honor to be involved in an organization that follows the calling for action and compassion. The Foundation for Philippine Progress has been leading the Sending to the Philippines relief for 2 years now. The Foundation's collective vision to reach out to those most in need is inspiring, impressive, and quite humbling, as it continues to envision its goal of a full life for every Filipino. It has embarked on missions to provide medical and surgical needs to the marginalized in far-flung areas, mobilized immediate and direct help in disaster relief efforts, conducted community education resources and activities for barrios and villages impacted by environmental or socio-economic challenges. These among many other worthy actions. And because each and every one of you here today has Philippines in your heart, we are thankful and hopeful for your continuing support through donations, participations, or volunteering efforts. In the light of the current state of things the world over, we hope to foster through our actions a more meaningful celebration of solidarity with our kababayans, not only in the Philippines, but with everyone the world over, recognizing the perseverance of a people back home beyond the crisis of the times. Through our work and programs that reach across nations and peoples, we truly hope to make a difference where and when it counts most. And so in the words of Frederick Douglass, I quote, "The conscience of this nation must be aroused, for it is not light that is needed, but fire. It is not the gentle shower, but thunder." And because each and every one of you here today has the Philippines in your heart, we are thankful again and hopeful for your continuing support through donations, participations, or volunteering efforts. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you, Kuya Roger. So the 7-part launch of Philippines is in the Heart, our signature series event, is carefully curated as our own contribution in keeping the Philippines alive in our hearts. We want to utilize our platform to provide current and accurate bits and pieces about the Philippine history, culture, food, language, along with the current situation on the ground. We want to maximize our platform to get together with all of you to discuss any and everything about the Philippines and be a place where we can have truthful and meaningful discussion about what is dear to us. After all, we know that even though a lot of us are not back home in the motherland, the Philippines is in our hearts. Scheduled around key historic moments such as Philippine Independence Day on June 12th and the Philippine State of the Nation Address on July 27th, this webinar series is designed to enjoin participants to learn more truths about the Philippines through the lens of historians, scholars, community organizers, and our volunteer partners for progress in the US and in the Philippines who are doing tireless work on the ground. We named our We named our series Philippines is in the Heart to honor and commemorate Carlos Bulasan and his work. He was a writer, poet, novelist, and a nationalist who arrived in Seattle in 1930. His story and work have made a difference in the lives of so many of us. Like so many Filipinos, Carlos Bulasan migrated to the US in search of a better life. His experiences and hardships as a new immigrant living in America were documented in his prolific writing and is best known for his novel, America's in the Heart, followed by his collection of short stories, The Philippines is in the Heart. Like Carlos Bulasan, we recognize that for a lot of overseas Filipino workers who have been living in the streets of Saudi, Lebanon, and Hong Kong because they lost their jobs due to the COVID-19 pandemic, they appeal for help in order to continue supporting their families back home. The Philippines is in their hearts. For a lot of our kababayan who are not allowed to fly back to their own home country because of the pandemic travel restrictions, the Philippines is in their hearts. For 100,000 Filipino seafarers who are currently stuck at sea and have been longing to go home to their families, the Philippines is in their hearts. For a lot of our kababayan whose upbringing have been separated from the beauty of the Philippine culture and traditions and are trying to reconnect to their roots through Filipino food and learning Tagalog, we know that the Philippines is in their hearts. Filipino or not, born in the Philippines or not, the love for the Philippines is something we all share. Our signature series event exists to honor that. We hope that you enjoy this series that we put together for you.
Thank you, Ron. During the launch of this series, we started a raffle. All of the participants of the webinar had a chance to win some prizes that bring us closer to the Philippines. We had Carlos Bulusan books, Filipino cookbooks, traditional Filipino textile, Tagalog English dictionary, and traditional Filipino accessories. So to participate in the raffle, we had encouraged participants to make a donation of at least $5 to support our work. From last week or the past few weeks, there were donations that came in, and those individuals will be part of this raffle as well. If you are so inclined, we encourage you to please share in the chat box that you intend to make a donation, and our staff will jot down your names to include in the raffle today. These simple acts do so much in changing the quality of life of our kababayan in the Philippines. Your names will be in the raffle basket for the rest of this webinar series. And for today's event, we will be picking the winners before we wrap up for the night. So tonight we will raffle off a cookbook titled I Am Filipino and This Is How We Cook, and a malong scarf from Mindanao. And now I will pass it off to our featured guests for this evening, who are also our project coordinators, Jeline Abenoja and I Kalalo. Welcome.
Hello, thank you. My name is Julina Abenoja, and I'll be introducing my co-presenter for this evening. Ai Kalalo draws from her desire for all Filipinos to have access to their land and basic needs when she's curating food and event ideas for the Filipino community. While in college, she studied sound engineering, graphic design, and multimedia, from which she learned valuable skills that she willingly gives back to communities she cares most about. An event technology director by profession, Ai Kalalo also spends her time as a professional DJ and as the other half of the popular Filipino-inspired dumplings pop-up in Seattle, which she co-owns, That Dumpling Dough. Ai loves to cook, fish, and forage, activities that she loves sharing with her family and friends. She has participated in immersion trips to the Philippines and has coordinated fundraisers for survivors of Typhoon Haiyan and the Mount Taal volcanic eruption in the Philippines. Her involvement with the Foundation for Philippine Progress allows her to serve the underserved sectors of the Philippine society while also maximizing her skills and expertise.
Thanks for the intro, G. Now to introduce you, Jeline Abenoja is a self-taught dessert and pastry chef and community organizer born and raised in Renton, Washington, and currently resides in Portland, Oregon. She is the owner and maker at Shop Halo Halo, where she sells a curated mix of handmade Filipino goods and sweets, some of which have been featured in events such as the Portland Stellar Art Showcase, Filipino Eats Week, and the Foundation for Philippine Progress's annual gala. Jolene has a deep love for her Filipino roots and honors the migration story of her parents by working towards the Philippines, where everyone has access to food, healthcare, education, and basic human rights. This past Saturday, for part 1 of Kumain Ka Na, we had featured guest Chef Charlene showcase a live cooking tutorial and discussion around one of her favorite Filipino dishes, pancit. She also shared her personal story around being a chef, her family migration to the US, and her love for the Philippines. Thank you, Chef Charlene. For tonight's presentation, we are focusing on our immersion trip to the Philippines we had in December 2019, where we integrated with communities from the island of Panay. The Philippines has a deep history, but for the sake of time, in tonight's presentation, I'll give a brief overview of our culinary history and culture, and we will expand on the topic in a future segment of our series. Before I start, I would like to pose a question. Conversations around Filipino food in the US are centered around culture and identity, but in the Philippines, conversations around Filipino food arise out of need and hunger. Why is that? The Philippine Islands is an archipelago of more than 7,000 islands and rests along various trade routes in Asia Pacific. Along with direct trade and cultural exchange in the 9th and 10th centuries, Chinese influence is best seen in noodle dishes such as pancit and lumpia. Over centuries of colonization, Spanish dishes were largely incorporated into menus for special occasions such as adobo and menudo, a pork and liver stew, and desserts such as pan de sal and leche flan. It is said that about 80% of the dishes prepared in the Philippines today can be traced to Spain. Then, with US influence came canned goods, convenience food, and fast food. So you have Spam and corned beef. Is that healthy? There are 6 major culinary regions in the Philippines. In northern Luzon, there is the profile of steamed or boiled vegetables that is flavored with bagoong, which is a fermented paste made from fish or shrimp. Such examples are represented in dishes like pinakbet and denengdeng. The central part of Luzon, you'll find influences from Spain and China through dishes like embutido, which is a stuffed pork sausage, and I don't know about you, but I like my raisins in embutido. How about you? I want to see that in the chat. South of Manila, you'll find foods flavored with the use of vinegar and sour fruits. An example of this profile is sinigang. The southern tip of Luzon is the region of Bicol, and there they're known for their fiery food with coconut milk. Such dishes are laing, that is taro leaves with bagoong and coconut milk. The middle region is the Visayas, where you'll find a salty profile from foods such as dried fermented fish like daing, pusit, and hipon. Visayans like to eat raw fish, as in kinilaw. Kinilaw is like ceviche, except instead of using citrus to cook the raw fish, you use vinegar. The region is also well known for its sweets such as turones and banana chips. Lastly, there is the region of Mindanao, where the cooking style is influenced by Indonesia and Malaysia. Here you'll find curries, and the food is very spicy. The Filipino flavor profile has layers and immense depth characterized by the combination of sweet, sour, and salty. Green mango dipped in bagoong or cheese and ube and ice cream are few examples of how Filipino cuisine pairs with the sweet and savory. Philippine cuisine is an amalgamation of cultures. At its essence are the traditions of techniques of our indigenous ancestors who lived primarily off the bountiful land and sea. As more and more external influences come in contact with our island, our cuisine adapts and evolves as we do. With all that being said, we'll go into our experiences in the Philippines to learn about the interconnections of why land, food, and culture are such important aspects of the lives of Filipinos. When the land thrives, the people thrive.
Okay, so as mentioned earlier, back in December of last year, both I and myself, along with other community members and organizers, had the opportunity to visit the Philippines on an immersion trip where we visited part of the Western Visayas. We'll go through some of the photos and experience from the immersion trip, and then we've also prepared videos of us making some of the dishes we had there that inspired us or evoked some sort of feeling of comfort and nostalgia. So this on the left is a photo of Dritz and Inez. They were our guides during our time in Iloilo. So we were on the island of Panay. Iloilo is in the southern region of the island. And to the right was prior to the typhoons were coconut groves. In Inez's village of Ingore La Paz, their primary source of income was coconut groves, fishing, corn, but these are things that were heavily affected by Typhoon Haiyan. There was a lot of flooding in the area, a lot of pollution from poor sewage, and nearby, near her village, was a coal-fired power plant. And the environmental pollution that is exuded from that power plant also really affected the land and the sea and the river in that area. There was a lot of like acid rain. We had emergency messages on our phone during our time there that indicated that there would be acid rain, and that affected the land very negatively, made it inarable. And then much of the primary agriculture products died off as a result of that. Here you'll see on the sides of houses, this is essentially what is their sewage system. Inside of the house, a lot of the time the CR, or the comfort room, restrooms, the pipes of the toilet will directly lead into kind of a pit beneath the home, and then seep out underneath into these trenches that are around the outside of the homes. So it's out in the open. If there's flooding, there's contact with raw sewage, there's potential contamination for water sources, and just in general, it's really gross for that to be the reality, to have it just kind of out in the open on the daily. Some areas don't even have the trenches. Right here, you'll see a picture of a river. This was also very common in Manila. We spent time in Manila as well, where the raw sewage will just go directly into rivers. There's garbage that's thrown into them, debris, and this is the same place that people are fishing out of. In places along the line, there's areas where they can potentially contaminate water wells and water sources. This was an evacuation center in Inez's village that was occupied by about 12 families during Typhoon Haiyan. So the area that she lived in, there's way more than 12 families, but this evacuation center only had the ability to comfortably fit in about 12 families. And these are people who have lived in this evacuation center for 6 months, or 6 years now. I guess it would be 7 years now, who were promised either land to rebuild on, or were supposed to be relocated, but have yet to be relocated. In a lot of cases, there were a couple of families that we interviewed while we were there who were offered land to rebuild their homes on, but didn't have the money to be able to do so. A lot of them focus on their health care, basic needs, on the day-to-day, food, water. So the idea of having to rebuild their homes from the bottom up is just not even something that crosses their minds, because they're so focused on the day-to-day. On the left here, you can see in the background of this photo is the chimney of the coal-fired power plant, one of the chimneys. In this area, the air quality is really bad. Many of the children have asthma. A lot of the adults have develop lung cancer. And then there's an increased rate of birth defects in this area. And so it's all of these, like, this situation of having this be a part of their day-to-day, on top of already like abject poverty, proneness to typhoons. It's in an area that's has poor access to healthcare, food and water. And so all these things kind of compile and really affect the people negatively. The photo on the right is a stack of bricks that a lot of the children will gather piles of the coal ash and form them into bricks to rebuild homes. And that's also probably very unhealthy. Along the way, while we were kind of going through the community and interviewing different families, we came across people who were vending items on the street. The photo on the left here is a woman who is packaging charcoal to sell. In the middle, there is this kind of like makeshift setup of buckets that are boiling corn on the cob to sell to people. and then the woman on the right is packaging the corn to sell. So in this area, because a lot of the coconuts and other agricultural products have essentially died off or are not growing as well as they used to, one of the things that does still remain there is corn, and so that's become their primary product and source of income. Before we left Iloilo, the organizers there who hosted us made it a point to treat us to this dish called bak choy. It's a noodle dish, soup and noodles, and then it had like a bunch of different pork innards and things. It was really delicious. This is sunrise in Rojas City. Rojas is on the northern portion of Panay. So we took from Iloilo, we took a 2-hour bus ride up to Rojas City. We stayed with families there in fishing villages along the Panay River, families who also every day they face abject poverty and lack regular access to nourishing food and clean water. After 6 years, they were still facing the impacts of Typhoon Haiyan, only to be knocked back down by annual typhoons and flash floods. So these were some of their homes that, as you can see, were just made out of bamboo for the most part, and then tin roofs, whatever materials they could salvage from the debris resulting from the typhoon. We have a question here that's asking, no one in our group spoke Visayan. So in this area, they spoke Ilonggo, and we had myself and a couple of other folks in our group speak Tagalog, and so we would translate from English to Tagalog, and then our guide would translate from Tagalog to Ilonggo and then back. So it was really complicated to communicate, but after a while, we kind of got the hang of it. In Rojas, we woke up at 5 in the morning and they took us to a fish market. So here you'll see bangos and then all of the boats coming in for the day with the catch. So everybody kind of gets set up at 5 in the morning. And we went there and bought some fish, talked to some of the fishermen who were there. Do you want to add in this area or this portion?
Yeah, it was interesting to see that. That's my cat in the background yelling. That there's sections of the river that are sanctioned off to the local government. So the community can't fish within that area, and if they do, they get fined. So what that means is like there's so many sanctioned off areas that there's pretty much only a little piece of the river that they can forage. And after our trip, we came back to our host house, and they bought fish, brought it back, and prepared a huge feast for us. And we weren't expecting that at all. But, they went out of their way to make sure that we're being fed. And that's, that's part of our culture. Like we want to make sure that, we're taking care of each other. And that definitely was represented through this meal. So you can see on the next slide. Yeah, we had sinigang and bangos. So it was very, very delicious.
This is our group
photo. I was doing a selfie. There I am again on the boat. So they took us on one of their boat, and we were able to travel down the river and see the rest of the housing that was affected by the typhoon. And then you can also see all the sanctioned off places that the local government designated to themselves. Yeah, there's the boat or housing on the river. And because there's no efficient way of running water, there's no plumbing. So what they did is that they dug trenches throughout. This is a rice field. They dug trenches throughout the rice field so that the rain can come down and give life to the rice.
So there was one day during our trip in Rojas where our guides took us through the forest. We went out with students from this local university who were doing surveys to kind of more of the far out areas, asking folks what their basic needs are, if they need any healthcare or medical attention for anything, and just, kind of surveying folks. But we went through the forest and foraged for wild guava. We found some ginger. On the right is a pomelo. These are some wild mushrooms, and then on the right is oregano. They had some of the biggest oregano leaves I've ever seen in my life. And the folks there will utilize it as a medicine, an anti-inflammatory medication. It also has antifungal and antiviral properties. Here's some more of the wild fungi. And then here we have some of the community members who were traveling with us. We gathered this leaf called lagundi that we had to pluck it from the stems, and we boiled it down into this syrup that was being distributed through the community as cough syrup. So in this area, there's very little access to healthcare. There's usually like one large hospital there was a large hospital in the city, but here there wasn't even like a small clinic. And so the community organizers in that area will hold educational workshops to put together like a medicinal workshop where they will go over like different syrups and things. What are the herbs that are in the area that you can utilize as medicine? We saw malunggay that they used for mosquito repellent, aloe for burns and anti-itch cream. There was this berry called datilis that they used for blood sugar control, which was really interesting, and it tastes just like blueberries. And then, yeah, oregano for anti-inflammatory. So it was really cool to see this area that was really just thriving with all of these medicinal things that folks don't necessarily know about, and that the community there is really trying to take advantage of, really just trying to educate folks that even if we don't necessarily have access to traditional quote-unquote healthcare, the land provides for us. These were some of the community members who came out to greet us in Rojas. When they learned that folks were coming to visit from the US, everybody in the surrounding barangays came to the beach. And the first thing they said to us was, "Welcome home." And we all just burst into tears. On the left here is a Lola who was, she came early in the morning and she was collecting shells on the beach that she used to put together souvenirs for folks. And she sang us a lullaby in Ilongo, and everyone was crying. It was really sweet. None of us knew what she was singing, but it was just like really an emotional time. And then on the right is a fisherman who was actually weaving his own net out of debris that he found on the beach and like string. Here, so as I was talking about earlier, there are areas of the Panay River that are sectioned off. And if you can afford to, you can have fish cages set up behind your home. And so on the left here is photos of someone's fish cage where they essentially like do fish farming, and on the right there is what they're able to like, they kind of try to limit as the amount that they take every day, because some of it is utilized for their family to eat, but then also some of it they sell at the market. These were some of the homes that did not get rebuilt after Typhoon Haiyan. What was interesting that I noticed there was that like a lot of the homes, the only cement portion of the homes were the CR. I didn't know why, and no one could answer that question. So if any of you might know, please put it in the chat. But yeah, a lot of the homes were just made out of bamboo. So they're really easy to knock over with passing typhoons and floods and heavy winds. And this is something that like happens annually. And so you see these folks who are like hit so hard by a typhoon, who struggle to continue to rebuild while also meeting their day-to-day needs, when it's something that just happens every year. Here, there was a section it was about an hour away from the beach. We took a truck ride, an hour truck ride from the beach up to this area that was set aside for people affected by Typhoon Haiyan. I kind of refer to them as suburbs because all of the units look the same, but essentially each unit is offered to an entire family. There's no rent, but there isn't any, the unit itself is free, but it's 10 by 20 feet. And there's like families in there who are like 9 to 10 people. There's no access to water, no access to electricity. If you do want access to those things, you have to pay extra for them. The nearest grocery store is like a 45-minute drive, and it's situated on this hill where above them, uphill, is this garbage dump. And so when it rains, a lot of the contamination and pollution just kind of runs off into their community. And these folks are largely, a lot of them, the men are fishermen, or they used to live and work near the ocean or the river, and so they're like an hour out from the source of their income and their livelihood. It's about 100 pesos to travel back and forth, and so you really see these like families struggling to continue to survive when the options they have are so few. And so a lot of them either decide to stay in these homes without kind of access to their basic needs as well as a livelihood, or they decide to stay by the river where it's dangerous and they're prone to being knocked down again by typhoons and other natural disasters. This was taken on the beach in Rojas. There were a lot of areas that were there were just compilations of debris left over from typhoons past, and people will go there to collect materials to rebuild their homes. And so you really see how our people are just very resourceful. Nothing goes to waste. Any tarp on the side of the road is utilized as a wall for your CR. Any wood or bamboo that's taken from these areas can be used to patch up holes. And then this was also taken on the beach. There too. Hand it back to I.
Thanks, Jolene. So Jolene and I prepared 2 videos from our trip, and it's we're showing a recipe that we found inspiration from the trip. So this video right here, I just wanted to prep you all that when we went to that fishing port, Kuya, he bought bangos, came back, he cleaned it, wrapped it in banana leaves, and started a small fire, as you see there below the cutting table. He started a small fire with coals and plastic bags. He used plastic bags as tinder. But I was standing there just, like just amazed, because also, like I'm a foodie and I was like interested to see this process. So that's my video later is an inspiration of this. And I just want to show you how he was preparing it. And he's talking in Ilonggo, so I can't understand what he's saying.
Gabi ganito baka naman sa electrical tape.
Kapag electrical tape, humus lang sa pulo. Packing tape.
Tinutang ko ka nang dyan lang.
Gulong niya kuno din sa duko.
Ay, di na ito sa duko. Pasok lang mo ito pa lang kakatay siya.
Nagmuno pa niya. Ari ko mga nado.
Ay.
Simple. Nari na sa duko mo.
Yep, the sound of the rooster. So last weekend, my family and I went on a trip to Discovery Bay, and that's in Washington. It's about an hour and a half drive from Seattle to Discovery Bay. We also went harvesting at Dosiwalep State Beach. We went harvesting for clams and wild edibles. From there, we went back home and I prepared the smoked bangos, and my family also prepared a few meals to add to the kamayan. Kamayan can translate to eating with your hands, and it's a traditional way of eating that many Filipinos still prefer to use. And there's something quite intimate, right? There's something quite intimate about eating with your hands. It's like you have a deep connection to the food as opposed to, using utensils. Like the food is in your hand, you feel the textures, and things just taste different when you eat with your hands. I don't know if your mom fed you or your dad or your lolo, it just triggers that memory of them feeding me, rice and banana. And even though that if I would to do it to myself, it would taste different. So there's something about our parents' hands that also adds that, umami taste to the food. And in my video, I just wanted to highlight the communal and family aspect of our culture while showcasing what we have harvested from the land. I also want to give thanks to a few culinary influences of mine. I want to give a shout out to Melissa Miranda. She's the owner of Musang Seattle, and these are local restaurants. Herbal Doña with Ilaw Coalition, Lorna Velasco with Sariwa Farm in Woodinville. She actually grows a lot of Filipino vegetables. Right now, I think she's growing ampalaya, so bitter melon. I'm visiting you soon, Lorna. And I want to give a shout out to Chef Charlene, my loving partner, and most of all, my mom and Lola, who are huge influences in why I love to cook and why I want to preserve our culture. Shout out to all those who love to cook or are curious about learning how to cook our cuisine. And now I will show you my video. It's in a YouTube style. Hope you like it. Enjoy. Hey everyone, today's recipe is smoked bangos, and I'm gonna grill it afterwards. This recipe was inspired by my trip to the Philippines last year. In addition, we're actually gonna do Kumain style tonight, so there's gonna be several dishes laid out on banana leaves, and I hope you enjoy it. So this is my first time smoking anything, and I'm gonna attempt to make this work. I bought a smoker, and it looks like this. It's a box smoker. You can convert any gas grill or charcoal grill into a mini smoker. So what I have here, I bought some wood chips. We're gonna do a dry smoke, so I'm not gonna soak these. Some people prefer to soak them in water for a different type of method. Just based on my research, using dry wood chips is key. All of the wood chips are in the box. I'm gonna place the box onto the grill directly, not on the racks, but the part where, I don't know what you call this, it's where the gas goes through. Just set it over there. I'll check back in a few minutes, close the grill, and see if it starts smoking. Alright, so this is bangos. It is also called milkfish in English. It's actually the national fish of the Philippines, and it can be found in oceans, rivers, and ponds. Kind of has a slight earthy, muddy taste to it. I love it, and a lot of Filipinos love it. Commonly eaten with vinegar, rice, and many other things. I bought this from the Asian market. They already chopped off the tail for me. That's okay, I'll show you how to clean the rest of it. Just giving this a good clean. Now I'm just gonna make a cut through the belly. I'm not gonna cut it all the way through or fillet it because I want to smoke this whole. I'm just gonna get rid of the guts and the gills behind the head. There's the inside. Gonna clean this out. One thing to note is that bangos actually has a lot of bones. Tinik is how you say it in Tagalog. You can actually choke on them, so you gotta be careful. Today I'm not going to debone the fish. Just gonna, again, cook this whole. This right here is actually the stomach fat, and this is delicious in sinigang. A lot of people eat this as well. Alright, fish is clean. I'm gonna now season it with some salt and pepper. Next step, I bought a pack of banana leaves. They had the banana leaves wrapped around the fish and then put the fish directly on the hot coals. When it gets heated, it just adds this great aroma and flavor to anything that you actually smoke inside of it. I'm gonna take this banana leaf and just roll the fish. There it is. Now let's check the grill. So I'm kind of going rogue here. I know there's certain temperatures that you need to have the grill at, but I'm just going to continue to check on the fish and see the process. To help retain the moisture of the fish, I'm going to add a pan of water so it'll create a steam once the chamber is closed. If I don't, then the fish is going to be dried out. Also, I want to note that we're not going to do a direct smoke where the fish is on top of the coals. It's going to be indirect, and all the heat is going to be trapped in the chamber, and this nice billowing smoke is going to flavor that fish really good. Right, place the fish right here and let it smoke away. Going to continue to check on the fish and see how it goes. While we're waiting for the fish to finish smoking, I'm actually going to make sausawan, and what that is it's a dipping sauce, and usually it's vinegar, garlic, onion, if you want to put pepper in it, which I am, and then people have their own secret ingredients. I have mine, and I am not sharing it with you today. I'm doing a substitute. So I have here, we grew some Walla Walla onions. I live in Washington. We're growing these in the backyard, freshly picked. I have Thai chili to add a kick to the vinegar, garlic, salt, pepper, and sugar. And the vinegar I'm using, I probably did 2 parts white vinegar and 1 part apple cider vinegar. I sometimes will use Ilocos, vinegar from Ilocos. It has a more sweeter, it's a sugarcane vinegar, but I didn't have that, and this is what I'm working with today. I'm just gonna chop the onions. Next is the garlic. I'm just gonna chop this up too. You can add as much garlic as you like, as little as you like. It's really up to you. Same with the onions. You don't have to add it. I just love the way the onions taste with vinegar. So how many of your aunties actually save sausawan in an old ketchup bottle or some type of condiment bottle? Do let me know. For the Thai chilies, I'm not going to chop them up. I'm just going to slice them down and then toss them in the vinegar. Right? It's the vinegar. I'm going to toss the onions in. Garlic, chili pepper. Now, salt and pepper. Again, it's up to you, to your tasting, how much salt you want to have in it. I kind of like having a little bit more salt than usual. So I'm going to put 1, 2, 3 tablespoons of salt. Again, this is 2 parts white vinegar, 1 part apple cider vinegar. I'm also just going to dash some ground black pepper in there. Next, totally up to you. If you don't like your sausawan sweet, I like it sweet, I'm just going to add a little bit of brown sugar. The dipping sauce, you can use it with fish, chicken, any type of seafood. I'm going to put a little bit more than a tablespoon of sugar. Lumpia, anything fried, just brings that flavor all together once you dip your food in it. And now, let's taste it and make some adjustments. Wow. I want to put more peppers in here. Some of my family members can't handle the heat. So we're going to let this steep, marinate, mingle, and all the flavors are just going to come out. And when it's ready, we'll have the fish with it and show you how to eat it. Since we're making a feast today, I wanted to also show the other things that we're going to cook for the Kumain spread. We went harvesting today at Dosawalaps. It's a beach here in Washington. And we found this, Salicornia. It's actually a type of succulent, also known as sea asparagus or samphire greens. You can eat it raw. There's a lot of salt because it's found along the beaches. We found these along the path of the beach. It actually tastes good. So what I'm gonna do is quickly put these in a boil, put them directly in an ice bath to stop the cooking. We're gonna make a salad out of this. All right, most of the ice has actually melted. Next, I'm going to slice some tomatoes and onions, and we're gonna toss them with the sea asparagus. When I was growing up in Vallejo, my Lola, she would buy this type of seaweed from the local Asian store, and I'm not sure what the name was. She would do something similar like this. Blanch the seaweed and just add tomato, onions, salt, and pepper, and it was a nice, refreshing salad. So if you know the name of that seaweed, it kind of actually looks like this. Please let me know in the chat box. Tomatoes are diced. Next, we're going to roughly chop the sea asparagus. Next, we're going to season with just salt and pepper. I like using my hands. It reminds me of the seaweed that my Lola used to make a salad out of. It's pretty good. We also went harvesting for manila clams. The limit is 40 per person. You have to have a shellfish license. The minimum size is 1.5 inches. Anything less, you pretty much have to put it back in the hole and cover your hole when you dig it so that it doesn't disrupt the substrate too much. Alright, I have a pot here with olive oil on medium heat. Gonna saute some garlic and then add the clams. We're gonna add some white wine, salt and pepper, butter. It's gonna taste bomb. Again, another thing, you can add as much garlic as you like. Not garlic, up to you. Some onions. Gonna add the clams. Just note that if after you're cooking this for a while and some of the clams don't open up, probably best to not eat that clam, just throw it away. In a few minutes, you're gonna start seeing some of the clams just pop open. And what's great is that the flavor is gonna get enhanced, this sauce, because the seawater that's inside of the clams is gonna add to the garlic and onions. And you don't need to add much salt to this anyway because of the salt water. Checking on the fish while the clams cook. And man, this looks good. Well, it's wrapped in the banana leaf, but I can tell. I can tell that this is being smoked. Alright, so I'm going to open this up and see how it looks. Then we're going to throw it back on the grill and grill some vegetables too. Just want to take a sneak peek at the fish. Ooh. I'm going to grill this in the banana leaf and just see how that turns out. Next thing I'm cooking for our Kumain spread are grilled oysters. So I'm going to put a few oysters on here. Once these oysters pop open, I made the sauce. It's garlic, butter, lemon, green onions, salt, pepper. I'll put it over the oyster when the shell pops open and let it grill a little bit more. Some of the oysters opened up. I added that garlic butter sauce to the oysters. Now I'm just finishing off the grill and added more. Going to grill some more vegetables and then we're gonna eat dinner soon. Alright, because this is a family dinner and we're doing Kumain, my partner is gonna cook bagoong fried rice. So right now she has a pan going with olive oil on medium heat. Just put the butter down, the olive oil. The butter's just going to add a little bit more richness to the flavor of our fried rice.
Okay, then I'm gonna saute some onions and garlic. Okay, you want to get a good sizzle on that. So now I'm gonna add the bagoong, and the kind that I'm using is this. This is the sauteed shrimp paste, and it's already cooked. This one's not spicy, but you can also, opt for the spicier version if you want. So I'm just gonna add that to the onion and garlic mixture. Maybe about 2 tablespoons or so. Mix that in there. Once that's got a good saute on, then we're going to add our day-old rice. This is long grain rice, and it tends to be a little bit better for fried rice because it separates easier as opposed to the short grain rice. So this is just, day-old rice. Try to separate all the grains. Okay, so this is pretty much done. I'm going to turn the heat off and just add cilantro and green onion to top it off. We're going to go ahead and also add a little bit of scrambled egg to finish off the rice. Okay, this is my mom. She's also gonna make a dish. Now first she's gonna add some garlic or ginger.
Then put the garlic. Chicken is already tender, and asparagus.
Recording. This is our Kumain spread. So Kumain is we're eating with our hands, and it's usually shared with your family. So and community. It's a communal type of way of eating. So we have the grilled oysters, the clams, the smoked bangus, grilled eggplant, the sea asparagus salad, and then tinola. We have tinola, watermelon, and mango. So we're gonna eat now. Salamat.
Salamat. Kainan na.
All right, that's my video. Thank you for watching it. I hope you liked it. I do want to note that I hope one day, when time allows, that we all can be together and have a Kumain together. I would love to do that for all of you. Next, I will pass it over to Jolene.
Thank you. I'm so hungry now after watching that. So the dessert that I chose to prepare is called bichu bichu. It's also known as carioca or cascaron in different areas of the Philippines. It's made with sticky rice flour, coconut milk, and shredded coconut and brown sugar. Bichu bichu was a treat we had as a merienda in Rojas City while taking an afternoon break. And it's something that I ate a lot as a child. And so when I had it there, it kind of just brought me back in time. It was a really crazy experience. But it's one of dozens of different kakanin that are popular in the Philippines. The word kakanin itself is derived from the Tagalog words kain, to eat, and kanin for rice. It's been part of Philippine cuisine for as far back as history has been recorded. And I actually didn't know this while doing research about kakanin in general, that it's rooted in our indigenous ancestry and was traditionally prepared as offerings for pre-colonial gods or offered to gifts to guests and visitors. And I love it because it really showcases the ingenuity and creativity of Filipinos to take 3 to 4 ingredients, the same ingredients, and turn it into dozens of different desserts. So you have like sticky rice flour, coconut milk, and sugar turned into, next slide. Here we have sapin sapin, puto, biko, suman, tupig, bibingka, palitaw. There's so many. I couldn't find a like comprehensive list of every kakanin that exists, but there's a ton of them. Next slide. And then bichu bichu holds personal significance to me because it was something that was always at my family's parties. So this is a picture of me in the very back with all of my cousins and my Lola Lourdes, who was the queen of our family's kitchen. I was the only girl in my family growing up in Renton, so I helped her out a lot in the kitchen, and it's why I really love preparing desserts. It's something that's very dear to me. And for her, she liked to put together like elaborate dishes and dinners for our whole family, but as she got older, developed arthritis, it became more and more difficult for her to cook and just be as active in the family as she used to be. But it was very important for her to still be able to contribute. And bichu bichu is something that's so simple to make. You just combine the wet and dry ingredients and roll it into like little nuggets and fry it. And it's so easy that it was something that she was still able to do despite just her changing capacity. And my Lola actually held on to her recipe until she passed away in 2009 because she didn't want anybody to like steal it from her. For every party, she was like, this is a thing that I'm gonna make and no one else is gonna make it because I wanna be able to contribute this to our family. And I actually had to ask her younger sister for the recipe. But yeah, when I had it in Rojas, it kind of just brought me back in time. My Lola passed away in 2009 and we visited the Philippines in 2019. So I hadn't had it in 10 years. So when I ate it, it was just this crazy otherworld experience. So now, next slide. This is my parents and me as a baby and my Lola. And then the next slide will have the video. My video is entirely stop motion. It's a lot shorter. I really was kind of inspired by those like short cooking videos, and I've never done stop motion before, but was really interested in doing it. So yeah, I hope you enjoy it. Go ahead. I didn't include this in my video, but you can make the caramel sauce out of brown sugar and coconut milk. I burnt it like 5 times and got really frustrated. So if you saw in the video, I included this little life hack. If you saw, it was a jar of coconut jam, and I just heated it up in the microwave a little bit to melt it down and pour it over the bichu bichu. But yeah, it's really simple to make, very delicious. I ate all of it. So to close out our main program for this evening, we kind of want to circle back to the question that was posed at the beginning and elaborate a little bit on ideas around Filipino food, family, and community. For those of us in the Filipino diaspora, especially for those of us who may have had upbringing separated from our culture or may have felt confused about our identity as Filipinos outside of the Philippines, there's this shared longing to reconnect with our motherland. And we do that by learning about our culture, history, learning Tagalog, and of course through learning to cook and appreciate Filipino food. Through the decades, we've seen the development of the growing Filipino food movement across the US and across the world, which is amazing, right? We really want to see that and develop and grow, and both I and myself are a part of that. Filipino cuisine is something to be respected and recognized. Food's how we show love, it's how we build community and support one another. But as so many of us celebrate and take pride in Filipino food back home in the Philippines, so many of our kababayan they go hungry. And though that's the case, being back home back in December, the families we stayed with opened up their homes to us. They humbly offered what very little they had. They prepared meals that were so simple but so filling. And there's this commonality we all share when it comes to Filipino food that is rooted in our identity as people who endure, people who persist. Throughout history, through waves of colonization and changing environmental conditions, we as a people adapt, but we still keep our essence. We're not a people who just make do. We do so much work with very little for the sake of the people we care about, right? And we as a people, whether in the Philippines or not, hold this inherent knowledge that we deserve more than the cards we've been dealt. It's the reason why so many of our parents leave the Philippines out of this need and desire for a better quality of life. It's the source of our creativity and resourcefulness, but also we recognize that what isn't necessarily what should be, right? Which is why the work of the Foundation for Philippine Progress is so important to us. We strive to ensure that every Filipino has access to their basic needs so that they are really truly set up to thrive. The Philippines is a land that's abundant, sorry, motorcycle in the background. The Philippines is a land that's abundant and plentiful, and its people are deserving of fulfilling lives. So we truly hope that message gets across, and we look forward to exploring the topic more in the future. So now I'll pass it off to Kuya Roger.
Thank you again, and Jeline, for that great recipe and great trip to the Philippines on food. You guys rock, and you got the puso, if I may say so myself. So everyone, please make sure you follow us on social media, the Philippines, at Philippine Progress on Instagram, Philippine Progress on Facebook. You can also be a partner for Progress, tinyurl.com/partner for progress. Involvement ranges from just being part of our mailing list to attending our events, to volunteering, donating, or hosting a fundraiser to our efforts. Or you could simply donate via philippineprogress.org/donate. Also, you could set up a Facebook fundraiser. If you could do that, these simple acts of generosity, of course, do so much in the lives of our kababayan in the Philippines. Thank you for joining us again. And now I will announce today's raffle winners. Here we go. It's a cookbook titled I Am Filipino. This is how we cook. And for the first winner here, let's see, would be Madeline. Madeline, you are the winner of our cookbook, I Am Filipino, and this is how we cook. And now for the Malong scarf, straight from Mindanao, beautiful piece of finery there. I got here Lucy. All right. Now we will get hold of you and we'll give you these prices. I will now pass it back to Jeline and I to close out tonight.
Okay, thank you, Kuya Roger. There's a resilience that runs through the blood of the Filipino people that truly shines in the day-to-day. Something that seems so small, like sharing a meal with one another, the flavors and textures of which transcend time and space, evoking a feeling of pride, of nostalgia, of being truly at home with one another, even if we've never been back home to the Philippines. In the words of Carlos Bulosan, it is only when we have plenty to eat, plenty of everything, that we begin to understand what freedom means. To us, freedom is not an intangible thing. When we have enough to eat, then we are healthy enough to enjoy what we eat. Then we have the time and ability to read and think and discuss things. Then we're not merely living, but also becoming a creative part of life. Maraming salamat sa inyong lahat. Thank you everyone for joining us this evening. Thank you to our staff team and all of the participants tonight. And thank you to Erna Cruz Louie of the American Center of Philippine Arts for donating the Rondalia music that you heard playing in the background. Pass it to I.
Please join us for our series finale this Saturday, July 18th for Baliktang Pilipinas. Did I say that right? You tell me. Make sure to visit tinyurl.com/iheartph to register for this event. We would love to hear any feedback from you that you have about this webinar, and to hear if there are any topics that you're interested in the future. You can also leave us feedback at tinyurl.com/iheartph feedback. And now to part with some closing words. Not only is the Philippines in the heart, the Philippines is also in the stomach. Thank you all for joining us tonight. Maraming salamat po.